Either it's Carl or Win the Common Magician. I wanted to show you something here briefly. This is a dollar bill, $100 bill, and we're going to try something interesting with this bill. I'm going to fold it lengthwise like this. You can try this at home too if you grab a bill. And the other thing you're going to need is a pencil, just a number 2 pencil. And I'm going to place the pencil inside the bill and try to find the exact center, and I think it's right about here. It's kind of one of those tricks that you learn to do when you're sitting at school and you've got a lot of time on your hands in study hall. It's just one of those kinds of things. I found that if you put the pencil directly in the center of a bill folded lengthwise like this, you can get it to balance if you're very gentle with it. So you can see you can get the dollar bill to balance. Now that probably doesn't look very impressive, okay? But if you try it, you'll see that you can probably get yours to do it. Oh, excuse me, I seem to have put the pencil through the bill. Maybe this doesn't look very convincing to you, but I promise you it is through the bill. You can see right here, right through the 100. No, really, it's right through the bill. You can see nice and close right through the bill. If you listen carefully, listen to this. Watch. And everything is fine. Look, I'm going to show you how I do that. This may be a shock to you, but the pencil does not actually rip the bill. Really, it doesn't. The pencil does not actually rip the bill. The pencil actually melts through the bill. So I'll show you what I mean here. Set the pencil in the bill. Just watch very closely. So again, it's not ripping. No ripping going on here. It's actually melting right through. So that is Misled by Timothy Wank. And it's an old trick that the first time I saw that was on David Copperfield's special back in the 90s. He did this trick when it was relatively new at that time. And I'm going to use this as a bit of an object sort of lesson here. And we're going to have a discussion on crediting and ethics. Crediting and ethics. What are some of the ethical principles that I think are important? What are some of the ethical principles pertaining to magic and effects and methods that I think we can determine objectively? And what parts of them, of ethics concerning methods and effects are somewhat more subjective? They sort of cater to whatever the consensus of a group of people might be. And again, some things are not really consensus issues. Some things are, I think, pretty straight cut, very easy, black and white issues that I think everybody can understand. So let's have a brief discussion on ethics. So first of all, I've heard a lot of people try to apply rules, sort of ethical rules to effects and methods. And maybe some of you have been in these conversations. I saw this recently on a forum, one of the website forums that are out there for magicians. And of course, in a forum, you get opinions. That's really what you get. You get a lot of different opinions. But I heard some things, and I read some things, I should say, that were mentioned in there that I'm not sure are correct. And I think objectively, they're just not quite right. There's the assertion out there that one of them is that if you don't buy an effect, if you don't purchase an effect that is on the market, that you have no business doing that effect. That really you need to purchase the effect in order to do it. So that's one thing. Another idea that was talked about was if you have another method for an effect that is on the market, that you should not do that effect with an alternative method, that you shouldn't be doing that. And then another idea that was out there was that people can prevent others from doing their effects. And the example that was given, and I don't remember what it was, but someone had written a book that was an expose of their show. It was an expose of various tricks that they'd come up with, and there was a little addendum there that was written in that was claiming rights. And the rights that were claimed was rights to the scripts and routines, and that anybody that read the book or bought the book would not be able to use those scripts or those routines without express permission. That any text that was written in there was not to be used in a show without permission, that was a violation of rights. And that's really what spurred this conversation. So I'm going to weigh in on some of these things. I'm going to explain myself and why I feel that way. And what does this have to do with Misled? So here's a story. Back in the 90s, I saw this on David Copperfield, and I thought, I want to have that. I need to figure out what that is. So I went into a magic shop, and I racked my brain about ways to do this, and I couldn't really come up with a way that seemed as clean as what he did. I had some methods that would do visually the same thing, but they weren't as clean as what he did. He had a bill and a pencil at the end, and he passed them out, and there didn't seem to be any kind of switching going on. It was very much in the open. So I thought, I want to know what this is. I'm going to buy it. I'm just going to find the effect. I'm going to buy it. I couldn't find something. So this is dealing with that first issue, or rather the second issue we talked about, which is if you have an alternative method to an effect that you see, do you have any business performing it? Yeah, I think you can. Sure, why not? Nobody owns an effect. Nobody owns an effect. And some people would disagree, but you're wrong. Nobody owns an effect. An effect is an occurrence, a phenomenon, a happening. Nobody owns the disappearance of something. No one owns the appearance of something. Nobody owns the movement of a solid through a solid. It doesn't matter what solids there are. Nobody can claim one solid and another solid and say that they own the effect of moving this particular one, be it a pencil and a bill or something else, and moving it through the other. It just doesn't, things don't work that way. No one owns a phenomenon. No one owns that. An effect is really something that can be boiled down to just 7 or 8 kinds of ideas out there and then applied to an endless number of objects or situations. So that's the first thing. In fact, it's been a long-standing exercise among magicians to look through a catalog, read about an effect, and imagine a way that you would accomplish that effect. What method would you use to do that? And it's not just merely an exercise. It's really a good idea to just read through effects and get ideas based on what other people have done, come up with a method, and go perform the thing. That's a wonderful sort of exercise to go through, and it's a good way to get your brain working and also develop your repertoire, piggybacking off of the kind of descriptions that other people have come up with when it comes to effects. Nobody owns an effect. So this is where I was at with this thing. I tried to come up with my own method. I couldn't find anything. I go to a magic store that I knew, and I walk in and I say, I saw this trick, and the guy behind the counter that was working that day, young fella, he said, yeah, I know what it is. He says it's called Misled. It's by Timothy Wink. And he said, we don't sell it in the shop. We don't sell it in the shop. I said, well, how much does it cost, and can you get it? He said, I don't know if we can get it. I'm not sure if it's on the market right now. It was on the market previously, but it's kind of a sold-out thing. It'd become popular. And he said it cost at that time, I don't remember what he said, but he said, I have one. He says, I have one in my pocket, and I'll sell it to you. I'll sell you mine, the one that he kept. He was happy to give it up. It wasn't something he was using very frequently, and he felt fine, selling that to me. No instructions involved, no tutorial, nothing. He said, if you know the trick and you've seen the Copperfield rendition of it, when you see the gimmick, you'll understand and you can work it out. So he sold it to me for $10 right from his pocket. He actually had it in a little Lifesavers Holes. It was kind of an old candy that was around at that time. They might still sell it, but a little cylindrical candy a container that would keep these little candies in it. And that's how he kept it, because the gimmick at that time was extremely fragile. It was made out of a type of plastic that would break very, very easily. So that's how he kept it. He sold it to me. I was very grateful. And I used that all the way through high school, as a teenager. And I performed this for many, many people and got a lot of use out of it. When I went away to college, I stopped doing magic for a while, and I lost track of this gimmick. And from what I can tell, it's probably in pieces smaller than an atom somewhere. I lost it. It's probably broken. It was a very fragile thing after all. When I went back to the marketplaces, I found that you couldn't get this. It just was unavailable. So I got in my mind, you know what? I'm just going to make my own. I know the method. I bought this from the guy secondhand. I know how to do it. It's a great method. So I made my own. I made mine out of aluminum. And that's the one I used right here. So this is the one, and it's lasted me 20 some years. It's lasted a very long time because I made it myself, and I made it better than the original. Now I know it's come onto the market since then. So the second thing is do I feel compelled to buy it again? No. And that brings me to the next thing. If I knew the method, would I be would I be ethically wrong to have made my own, knowing the method, but having not bought it? This is where I think it gets kind of gray for some people, and some people say this is black and white. You need to buy the effect in order to do that method. I disagree, and this is why. Making magic, and I sell some things too. I sell a few. I don't have a big market in it, and I'm not out to make $1 million, on magic stuff. I make a living doing something else, but I have a little bit of skin in the game, and I do sell some things, but it is a risky business. What you're selling is a secret. I mean, you could be selling gimmicks, that's for sure, but in the end, you're selling a secret. That's really what you're selling. You're in the market of secrets, and secrets, once they're sold, they're out. They're out, and then you are really just playing the numbers game with exposure in terms of the economics of the thing. As you market your effect, you've given the secret up. You hope that people will not just share it widely and openly, and you will make your sales off of those, those packages that you're selling in the store. And eventually that will run its course. You will either sell out of your gimmicks and not make any more, or the interest will wane and you won't sell any more, and you have to come up with something else. Or maybe years down the road, you can bring it back and bring up the interest again. But that is really just the name of the game. There's no ethics in there, I think, that control that or really protect you in any way. What you do have protection for is the thing that you're selling. Not the secret, but the actual media. The media that you're selling. The book, the pamphlet, the video, and also the dialogue that is original that you've come up with, which gets to this book idea. So that is really where the protections are at and where the ethics fall. Someone copying your media, your video, and redistributing it, or making a recreation of that. This is exposure like on YouTube of a marketed effect. That's kind of the idea there. I think that is the issue, right? It's the exposure of the thing and people that are propagating that. But if someone knew about it or learned about it through one of these kinds of avenues, or they came up with a method that was similar or close or even identical, there's no ethic issue there. There's no ethical issue there whatsoever as far as I can see, because you're not really dealing in the media. You're dealing in the secret, right? It's about the secret. You go back through the history of magic, and forever people have been replicating the effects that others do, sometimes hitting the methods on the mark, sometimes coming up with alternatives. It's happened over and over and over again endlessly. I have a book right here. Well-known book. We've talked about it before, right? John Lovick book, Switch. It's all about the $100 bill change. You see how big this book is? Okay. This is a wide variety of people talking about an effect and giving various handlings and methods for that one effect. They did not all violate ethics when they came up with their ideas. They didn't violate ethics when they marketed their own ideas for that. No one owns the effect of changing one thing into another. And some of these people came up with ideas that were absolutely the same. I mean, almost identical in terms of method. And some of them came up with them independently. Now, here's where ethics come, I think, into play when you're talking about a book like this or marketing in effect. I think that there is an ethical responsibility, but it's a gentlemanly thing when someone learns something from someone else. They improve it in some way, and then they go on to create something and they credit back. Or they get an idea on an effect and they credit that effect from someone who came up with it first or first kind of put the visual together. This, though, I think ends at that gentlemanly agreement. It's really not about copyright. It's not about patents. It's not about trademark registration. What you're dealing with here is just, I think, being a gentleman, being good with history, being a good steward of history, and sharing your influences and paying them forward. A lot of magicians are very good at this. John Bannon comes to mind, where when he does his media, he talks at great length about where he saw ideas, where he learned something from, where he got this idea from, where he got this idea. That's very important. Is it unethical not to do that? I don't think so. I think it's just very, very gentlemanly to do it and take the time to do that. You can see many arguments have come up about, one person came up with an idea, someone else marketed an idea that was very similar, and then this argument ensues. Notice that it really is just an argument. It's just a verbal fight. That's really all there is to it. There's never any action. There's never any kind of legal claim. It doesn't go there because nobody owns the effect. And honestly, nobody really owns the method either. Someone can own, I think, of course, the registered patent to a device that accomplishes something, but that's a whole different idea, right? If I come up with a device that accomplishes something, a certain effect, and then I register that patent, I have ownership to that device. And someone else copying that device then needs to pay me to do that because I beat them to the registration. Now, here's the thing. The thing with that is when you register a patent, you give up the secret because everybody can read the patent. Nobody registers patent to magical effects, right? Because that's the whole point. Again, we're coming back to the secret. The secret is really the issue. And the secrets are part of the complicated game of selling or creating or sharing magical effects and methods, right? It's a different ball game. It's not like anything else. So back to that idea of coming up with scripts and routines. Those, I think, are protected, right? Because what you're looking at is the poetry. You're looking at what someone is saying. You're looking at a script. In the forum, someone brought up the point that West Side Story, when the musical was made, there was these addendums to it, a claim to rights that whenever the production is done, it has to use this choreography, these lines. It has to be done with this kind of visual, and that is because West Side Story is a very particular telling of a plot. The plot is not owned. People can come up with any other story that is identically that same plot because that plot was actually taken from another plot. West Side Story is Romeo and Juliet, and Shakespeare doesn't really own, or didn't own, whoever Shakespeare is, didn't own that plot. That plot is as old as time and has been made over and over and over and over again and will continue to be because there's an endless, I think, a body of work there that can be created from that very basic kind of idea, that sort of tragic love story of feuding families, right? It's played out in real life. It's played out in fiction. So that, I think, is what we're looking at. When you look at magic, you're looking at methods and effects as being the plot, and methods as being the secret behind the plot. And nobody really owns those things. They own, I think, the media that they publish that on. That's what they own. They own the show that they make that has lines and dialogue and a sequence of events in a style with a choreography to them, with a setting, with a costuming, all of that stuff, everything that magicians forget about. That's what the show really is. The show is not the effect. The show is not the method. The show is everything else that the spectator experiences. The example I gave in this talk, and hopefully this will hit home with some of you, is that I could do everything that Ricky Jay does in 52 Assistants. Most of those things that he does, even down to the card throwing, is as old as the hills. A lot of those are classic effects. What I can't do is I can't say things that Ricky says in the way he says them, in the order that he says them in, telling his story. And I can't do it all in that same order with that same kind of aesthetic. That's his show. That's what he owns. That's the medium, right, that belongs to him. It's the script. That's what I can't replicate. I can do, 4-card assemblies. I can, cut 2 cards and cut to high card, and I can do various kinds of gambling demonstrations with obscure gambling hands, right? I can even throw cards at watermelons, but I can't say the things that Ricky Jay does. That belongs to his estate. And you can say this with any other kind of show. I can make the Statue of Liberty disappear if I darn well please. If I go get the permission from the federal government to record something like that, like Copperfield did, yeah, I can. I'm not doing some disservice to David Copperfield, and I'm not violating any ethics, even if I did it exactly the way he does it. What I can't do is I can't go on and on using the same poetic talk that he gives about liberty lost and liberty regained. And all. I can't do that. That belongs to David Copperfield. That's the show. That's the script. That is the literary work of art that is protected, just like in that book that was being discussed. That is what the author is claiming. You can't use these stories. You can't use this script. You can't do the routines in this way without my permission. But the effects are not part of that agreement. And neither really are the methods in the end. So that's my talk. Take with it what you will. I think it's a pretty bedrock kind of argument there. So yeah, find effects that you like. Come up with methods. Don't worry about, if you trample over somebody else's method. I think that, though, if you're going to be selling it and you're going to be sharing it, if there is some kind of influence on you, I think that you should credit that. And by no means should you ever share a method from an effect that you've purchased or that you know exists. That's extremely bad form. That's extremely bad form. And I think you're getting into a position where you're violating copyright if you're replicating that medium for others to see. That's a problem. So that's my take on it. Is muddy waters everywhere. But good luck with that. Comment in the comment section below, and happy magicking.